Good morning or shortly afternoon here. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. And I've been up trying to tidy up things, sort. It seems like it's a pin at a time in a mound of pins. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try to clean up and organize my life and my mess. So I shredded old tax papers back from 2012 and still have a few more to do for a couple more years. And I don't even know why I did that. I just thought, just get started doing something. Get started, one foot in front of the other. And because wherever I look, there are tasks to do. And then, of course, my spine, my mid back, is on fire with pain from standing this morning, maybe an hour, hour and a half. And I'd already taken added strong pain med to help. So, but it's what we've got to do. This is the way of our lives. And as Carol, one of our viewers, mentioned, the elixir of life, living and doing and keeping at it with try to be positive, joy within. And even though it's very mundane, what I'm doing here, and in a way sort of pointless, except for I thought of John the Hermit and his great spiritual director, 3rd and 4th century, that told him to water dead trees or sticks in the ground. He did it for a year to teach him discipline, to keep doing something. And of course, when you're first hearing about this, that John was asked by his director, he was a disciple of this man, to learn the hermit life, spiritual life. That's what he did the first year. He watered every day dead sticks in the ground. And he didn't ask a word about it. He didn't complain. And he understood eventually, or actually, I think rather soon, that it was a test. He didn't know how long he was going to have to do that. But it was discipline. So I was telling someone who wrote in a comment to me about something, that I was going to approach this mayhem of mess, construction mess, because my whole manual labor effort has been disrupted in the last 6 years now since I've been here, by 5 surgeries. One was a year recovery. This morning, my knee is so huge, so stiff and numb. My leg all swollen and red beneath it, but it's all numb, huge, hard, and painful. That was nearly 2 years ago, that knee surgery that failed. So I have bad luck with surgeries. And it's, and then I threw in the towel for a while. But we can't do that. Elixir of life. Discipline. It doesn't matter what we're doing in a way, as long as we are focusing our hearts and our minds, our intellects on God, on love, attitude of joy within us. So it's something to consider, no matter how mundane our tasks. We're learning discipline. We're always learning something. I'm sure that you heard me talk about St. Francis of Paola. He lived in he was born in 1416, 300 years before my dad was born. He died in 1508. He was 92 years old when he died. So his austere life, must have had good genes, plus his spiritual life was good. because he didn't eat much at all. It's amazing. His feast day is today, April 2nd, Francis of Paola. I looked up the pronunciation and it was an excellent pronunciation. I don't say it as well, but sort of fun to practice these different accents. Italian. He was Italian. And he was born in Paola, Calabria, Italy. And when he was 15 years old, he left home and lived in a cave by the sea. He was an anchorite, they say that word, because he was off by himself, but he wasn't totally enclosed in or blocked off. Anchorites and anchoresses, that was a term that was used in the Middle Ages often. Anchorite and anchoress. It's very similar to hermit. But some of the anchoresses and anchorites, especially the women, would have a hut or a cell built right up against the wall of a church, and often with a window in so they could watch Mass, and someone would bring them communion through that window. But they would also have a servant, a maid servant, the women would often, who had a room right next to hers, the anchoress, and a window out to the world. So there was a window or even sometimes a doorway between, but at least a window, because the servant then would remove the chamber pot of pee and poop and hand in food and things like that. Or if she were sick, try to tend the person. And then there'd be a window to the outside, so people would line up to come talk and ask for prayers, seek counsel. They didn't charge for it. They didn't ask money for it. And most of them didn't accept gifts, And the hermits in the desert would barter. They would exchange. Say if one was a basket weaver, would exchange baskets for one that would make bread, grew wheat and make bread, or got wheat somehow, or made pottery, or had been to a well and had a vase of water to exchange for a basket, etc. So, but Francis, his asceticism, he lived very lean, very hard, very simply, and his religious fervor really helped him clear his spiritual sight, cleansed his heart, cleansed his mind of the temporal world, and then he could receive more insights from God and communicated with God in the solitude. That's why solitude is so important for a hermit, if for their prayer life and communion with God, communicating with God. If you're living in a community, if you think, you want to start a hermit community, religious community, there is no such thing legitimately, but they've done it. Even in our several of the diocese hermits have started up their own religious orders of hermits with their bishop's blessings. At least two I know of women, and I think one of men. Another man wants to. And then someone has been floating the idea of bringing back Lauras, Lavra, Lavras. That was something they tried in the Middle Ages also, where they live in cells beside each other or very near. And then I know a bishop who approved some hermits to live with each other. They were good friends, elderly women. And let's be hermits. That'll give us something to do in our old age. One, her husband had died, and the other one was divorced. So they live together, shop together, eat together, pray their divine office together. That's not hermit, but they're diocese hermits. So anyway, Francis' life says why, if we observe holy people and how they live the holy narrow pathway, this is how we can learn the holy narrow pathway. And if we're hermits or anyone, God communicates with married people. He can. He will. We have to give time for that, and cleanse our hearts, cleanse our minds, our intellects of a lot of clutter, cleanse our surroundings, which is what I'm doing. I would go with whatever my body felt I could do, whatever day it was, or if I had workers coming, whatever they were going to come to do, I would do that. That's why the place is just a mayhem of different projects, because I'm not hiring people now. But all of these different things that were done by them, and then things that I did. Most of the time I didn't feel well, and things have to go in a certain order too when you're doing renovations. But I would have to go by that too, but a lot by my body. And I could always do demo work, demolish. That was, even if I felt terrible, because I didn't have to think. You just get your pry bar and your little short-handled sledge and go at it. And I could at least do that. So everything is, I have many projects that are nearly finished, just trim work needed. So, and that requires, painting them board by board, a process and all. And I have that area with my sawhorses with 2 doors on it that need sanding and repainting. And then I have to find someone to lift them for me and put them in where they belong, hang them. So I have all these things lined up that are stopgapped, and then I was going in a good pace, and then I got sick for those 11 weeks. So it's getting back into it now, though. But it's all discipline. I have to clear. I have to make my own surroundings cleared, even though I've learned with pain how to ignore things, distract from it. Even this was getting to me and blocking my holy narrow pathway. And I'm trying to sell things. I may have to just forget about trying to earn that money and take things to a thrift shop if I lose my patience, tolerance. So I have to understand this will take time. We all do. We have to understand the religious life and learning it takes time. Saints aren't made overnight. It's usually a lifelong process, very gradual. So Francis gave his time, and he made a wise choice, I consider, at age 15. He knew what he was called to do and what he wanted to do, and he did it. He didn't let anything else sort of interfere, which I know I get called off, but if it's charity, that's one thing, but sometimes even with charity, we have to discern. If it hadn't been a family member needing my help the last couple of weeks, I would have declined, or maybe gone just one time to help. So, because we have to make decisions for what we're called to do. So Francis, though, he had disciples gather around him. People heard about him in this cave and knew that he was receiving spiritual gifts from God, insights. So they started to come to him and wanted him to teach them. So by 1436, he founded a community called the Minims, meaning the least of the monastic orders. So he, in essence, then was no longer really a hermit when he created that order, although it was so minimalistic. And I could see a community if they didn't live together. There was one person who had an excellent idea, and that was the one I was in for 11 months. But we lived in our own locales, had our own spiritual directors, and we corresponded to this woman who started it and who was being guided by a monk at Parkminster, a Carthusian monk. The abbot or the prior at Parkminster was guiding her, and her vicar general of her diocese. It was in England. And so we went through phases of learning and what we were to read, and we had to do a lot of writing back of what we were learning and from the different books that we were to read, and set up our daily schedule and cut out the social and live our hermit life with guidance and structure. And then when I became a novice after 6 months, I was to put on this habit, which I did, and that's how I knew immediately, or within a couple of weeks, that is not what you should do if you're a hermit in when was it? 1998 then, and 1999. Stood out, people knew, thought I was a religious sister, and then also assumed that I had all this closeness to God, and strangers would come and pour out their hearts. But then she started messing up. The woman did, wasn't being obedient to her vicar general, and got very, very lost her temper. She went in the wrong order. I should have been talking to my bishop from the beginning about it. Instead, when she told me to toward the end, after I had this habit on and people were writing complaining, you're not just to wear a habit unless you're officially in a religious order. And so people rightly wrote. I had no clue about any of this then, but I found out. And then that upset the bishop, and they were doing a behind-the-scenes investigation of me rather than just calling me and asking me. But people from the town, from the parish, were already primed against me, so they were writing very ugly things. So they thought I was this crazy, evil person. And then they found out, but I pulled out because of the woman in charge. She did not have her statutes set up. She was not organized enough to be doing it. And it did fall apart then, maybe a year later. But anyway, things like that can be very tricky. But St. Francis of Paola developed this community called the Minims, the least of the monastic orders. And they observed a perpetual Lent. They lived as if Lent was year-round. They abstained from meat, fish, eggs, and milk. Francis subsisted on boiled herbs. He slept on a rock instead of a bed. Always wore a hair shirt. That was like an animal skin, very, very sharp, prickly. Or a shirt that had even cut human hair, like woven into it, so it would stick out and scratch all the time. It can cause you to itch and want to scratch yourself. His penances, especially his fasting, transformed his life, though. And even just for us, fasting not just from food, or not even from food, or from food that's not healthy, or just losing appetite for food, not having a delight in it. Of course, that's easy for me with pain. I'm never hungry for food, but I have to eat. Pain takes a lot of energy. But really, there's no enjoyment in my life. I have to tell you that. That's partly why I laughed and laughed with Pope Francis saying we need to have more joy. And I knew, most people say, if they don't mean external joy or be laughing and be cheerful and all this on the outer, they would explain inner joy. So most people, when they say, oh, you need more joy, that's what they're thinking of. And that's what we think of when most people when we hear it. But I have no enjoyment in my life at all. Really. It's all just work and suffering and having to live each day. So I even sort of laughed with the elixir for life, elixir of life. I love the term, but and I'm grateful for the elixir of life. But Carol had mentioned that term, gratitude for the elixir of life. But no, in reality, no, there's nothing joyous or on the outer kind of joy. Food is unappealing to me. It's just work to make it, and to eat it. It's a chore. To wash my little bowl in the half bath sink. It's work. It's pain. Everything is pain to me. But that's all the external. But there's inside of me, God. That's what keeps me going, Christ. And I have him now, and I'll have him when I'm dead. And I know I need discipline to keep doing the work of suffering. My life is all suffering. Now, I have inner joy for the pups, of course. But it's work. It's all work. The things that I have to take on to force me to get up, to overcome the pain, because my mind, after, 39 years, or 37 years, 38 years, my mind no longer could get up, overcoming pain by the mind. So I got Mercy first, and she was so compliant. I had to get this other one. Plus she got depressed because when I'd be sick, I couldn't play with her, could barely, function. So, and she'd get lonely. She wanted, so their company, they can exercise each other. But he moans and carries on in the morning to get me up, and rattles. He shakes his crate and stuff. So he really forces me up. And then they both can play with each other. And yes, it's a joy in a sense, but see, do you understand what I'm saying? My life is all suffering and all pain. And so on the outside, and it's very ascetic in that regard, but it's not from my discipline, not from mine. But over time, like when I had the pump put in, my appetite really got messed up. I used to like chocolate, and I can't eat that. It's totally unappealing. So yeah, so these things, but it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just how it is. Sleeping's hard. I wake up several times at night. I've had to start taking added pain med first thing in the morning. Take my 1 12-hour extended release pill, and I've had to start taking another separate type of pain med that's fast acting, so that I can feed the dogs and get them out and keep going. So, but it's okay. It's penances, but it's part of the holy narrow pathway to develop and to recognize the inner joy. So I'm very grateful that Francis 1 mentioned, or somebody had left a comment had heard it. Did you know that Pope Francis said that we all need to be more joyful? Well, within, definitely within, to know, to recognize that Christ remains in us, his love is in us, and our love is in him. But as far as outer, that can be or not be. Does it really matter? We know to smile. We can do that, and be pleasant with others. That doesn't necessarily that we have outer joy. We may be, and I don't think we should fake it too much. We may feel, if I would stop yapping right now and going over some of Francis of Paola, in fact, I have to be very careful not to even think it. I would throw up. I have such nausea all the time. And so that's how it would be. I wouldn't be able to speak or think. I would just be ready to vomit right here, because the pain is that much. So I wouldn't be smiling. I'd be vomiting. So but it's okay, love is in me and I'm in love. So we can take our minds and think about Christ in us, our intellect, and our will, and discipline ourselves to keep functioning in life and to enjoy the inner aspects. Because St. Paola, sleeping on a rock, some people, that would be okay for my back, or would. I used to sleep on the floor. I can't get up and down now because of my knee, but I always slept on the floor. It felt good on my back. But a rock would be similar. So when it comes to ascetics, we have to consider for each one of us what would be ascetic for us, what would help us to die to some luxury. What do you think it would be in your life? For Francis, it was not eating meat, fish, eggs, or milk. In fact, I have a book of his life and a biography. And a king, he was visiting. A king had called him to give him counsel. And Francis refused to eat any of the food that the king tried to tempt him to eat, because he'd heard how Francis was so ascetic and wouldn't eat fish. So he started, trying to tempt him with this delicious fish and even egg and everything. He would not eat it. Not at all. Francis never broke his resolve not to eat any of those foods. And it became a game with the king. He was more interested in that than then learning about what Francis could have taught him spiritually. So see, in my viewpoint, Francis should have eaten one of the hard-cooked eggs that the king sent with the servant to tempt him. And just, who cares? Just eat it, get the king off of being so determined to break him. Then he could leave and go back on his fast if he wanted to. Because I've noticed just naturally, that I eat food. It doesn't matter. Every now and then, my sister, if I've had a surgery, she'll send a box of Seeds candy. And even though it makes me more upset stomach, I eat a piece, or I'll cut them in half even, or eat a fourth, or a little nibble, and later another, and eat it that way. And then if someone, well, no one comes, but like if the neighbor comes, she didn't even come when I had that. But I would offer to someone if someone would come to share it. But it would be like prayer for my sister. who suffers terrible depression all her life, clinically depressed, on medication, and also has an anxiety disorder. So it was, I ate it as a prayer. I turned it into a mission, a purpose, and just nibbled at it and was grateful. And she sent the nuts, she sends the nuts and chews because I can eat nuts okay. So, but it's never anything that I'm like, oh wow, oh I can't wait to eat or anything. But I do. It's not. I wouldn't make food a big issue with anyone or a big proud point like, oh, I abstain. I'm that ascetic. And I don't think Francis did, but in that case, he was just set on that. And I've noticed when I have died to something, you get to a point where it doesn't matter if you have it or you don't. It's not a big deal to deny yourself because it doesn't matter. Either way, I could wear my old gray jumper, although I got rid of them. I could wear that. I could wear my work clothes. I could wear one of the nice clothes that I had to try to blend in with the cathedral people. Or I could put makeup on so I don't embarrass my daughter with how sick I look. Or not, but I did for her. If I were abstaining from makeup, say, which I did for a few years, and to the chagrin of my aunt and other people, no matter what, I was plain, and even if I looked at death's door and had to be with them for some nice occasion, my daughter's wedding, back then I was wearing that habit and no makeup. My hair was maybe an inch long. No one saw it. I had a veil on, but and she didn't mind. She said she didn't mind. Go ahead. She was proud of me for doing something that meant something to me. She liked that idea. So, but you get to the point it doesn't matter. So you just do what's best for others. Charity. I don't care if I wear makeup or I don't. I've tried it recently 2 or 3 times to see if I'd mentally feel better. It doesn't really, but maybe psychologically a little. I don't know. But see what I mean with our asceticism. True asceticism gets to the point where it doesn't matter if you have or you have not. And if it's going to cause someone else some big issue, then don't. Go with what's going to ease them. See? That's true death to self. But Francis, he really had a thing going with that king. It kept up several days. This battle going back and forth. King would keep having his chefs cook, nicer and nicer things. And then even the things that were very, very simple, knowing Francis wouldn't even eat a hard-cooked egg, kept up with that. So it got sort of ridiculous. But through asceticism, though, when we die to ourselves and cut out things that really do matter to us, like the quiet hermit who wants to go to that concert. See, that would be a great ascetic death to self, to not do it and to lose the money for the tickets. That would be an example of what would really help a person grow spiritually and have command over themselves, not have the temporal rule them, or something that they love that's temporal rule them, New Age or not. It's a good. What we're learning in asceticism is to have possession over our thoughts, our desires, to a point that we don't need them. That because we're cleaning ourselves out to hear what God wants of us and to always do what God wants. And it will always be charity, and sometimes for ourselves. A charity for ourselves God might have. So, like, you're sick, take medicine. Or if you tend to be sort of hyper when you're sick and desperate or whatever, then not have all the over-the-counter stuff or get desperate or impatient. Then just drink a lot of ginger water or lemon water, natural things, and tough it out. Allow the sickness to last a little longer if it's going to. And it depends on where our minds are, what's holding us, what has a grip over us. And I got testy with this last sickness about that doctor who I would have ideas of what would help me. And it's too bad with the cough medicine that he didn't get me a prescription, because my neck's messed up from coughing so hard. It degenerated, more discs, the PT said. You can tell by feeling them from how it was before I got sick, and that's why I was more dizzy. But still, it was, I should have caught on, just to let go. And I did. I eventually stopped even bothering with that doctor and just did what you guys recommended. And that helped. That NAC did it for my lungs, just cleaned them up right away. So anyway, this is more about what asceticism is. Because after a while you get used to it. Sleeping on a rock, you get used to it. It's no big deal. And if it becomes a big deal to other people, I would think, no, don't do it then. If they're, oh, wow, they're really holy, they sleep on a rock, isn't that something? I would break that right then and there, that rumor or that talk. Just sleep in a regular bed. Doesn't matter either way. Once you are dead, once nothing really matters of the temporal, then it doesn't matter. Do something that isn't going to stand out to others and make a big deal. So, but Francis, his faith grew through not only his asceticism, it was his devotion to God and cutting away from the world. Prayer life, listening to God, and charity, teaching these other people, letting them learn from him. But we do have to start somewhere, though, with asceticism, see. So that he did the right thing then, I'm just criticizing that one time with the king. It really didn't prove anything other than how strong-willed he was, that he wasn't going to give in to the king. But he didn't make any headway with counseling the king, because the king was only focused on trying to break Francis's extremism on eating. But Francis then had the gift of healing, cured the sick, raised the dead, averted plagues, expelled evil spirits, and guided souls to pray. He taught people and inspired people. So acts of charity when we do that. Anytime we help anyone draw closer to God, that is an ultimate charity, really. When we encourage anyone to love God and to be close to God, especially with prayer. When Francis was accused by a priest named Anthony, Francis gave Anthony a seat by the fireplace. Francis had founded a Catholic order without being ordained. Francis gathered embers from the hearth unhurt in his hands. He did it with his hands and said, Come, Father Anthony, warm yourself. You are shivering for want of a little charity. And his priest, his Father Anthony, repented and became Francis's panegyrist. It wrote about him, exalted him in writing. At the time, I guess you couldn't found an order without being a priest. And of course, in him doing that, though, he ceased to be a hermit at that point. When he had all these people and wasn't living alone, he didn't have his solitude. But he became a great leader of a religious community, the Minims. I think they exist to this day. They're not huge, but I think there's some in Europe somewhere. And he talks about this King Ferdinand of Naples here, who was very nasty, and he offered Francis money for their convent where they could live, their monastery. Francis asked the king to give the money to his subjects, to his own people, instead of to Francis. It is said that Francis softened King Ferdinand's heart by making blood flow from the coins. Louis XI of France sent for Francis to ward off the approach of death. That was the king that kept trying to... He was very, very ill, and he invited Francis, wanting Francis to heal him. And Francis did, consulted and blessed Louis XI at the bequest of the behest. The Pope asked him to do that, to go and comfort him and consult him and give him a blessing. And I think Francis ended up healing him. He didn't die right then. God provided a miracle through Francis. And understand, when this says here that he did this, he did that, it's God who does it. It's not the people. It's not these saints who do it. God does it through them. But he blesses them for their closeness to him. People who are all caught up in the world aren't able to connect with God or be used with God for miracles. They don't have a close relationship with God. Like little Charlene Richard. I have a friend, we're asking prayers. A man, he's 55, he's married, lovely couple. They live in Florida now. Actually, my daughter told me about him. They're good friends of hers. At Christmas time, he started losing vision in one eye. Immediately got on it. And really fading. And everything else seemed fine. And they did scans and scans. They saw nothing. But he went totally blind, and they knew something had to be wrong. And they finally, after, I think it took 3 or 4 weeks though, the tumor was so tiny, it was some kind of a brain cancer that they couldn't detect until it was already at 6 weeks point. It was very aggressive. Then they saw the tumor got large enough to perceive it. It was behind something also. And the cancer then was so aggressive, he only has 4 months to live. Unless he has lots of treatment. They're trying to save his other eye. He's losing sight in the other eye. Only just so that he can at least have the last of his life seeing with one eye, or sort of seeing. Give him that comfort. And if he has treatment, he might live a year. So I communicate with this woman who has tremendous cross to bear and bears it well, and her husband they're saints, both of them. How he cares for her. She had hereditary schizophrenia, so she's on medications, but she's become very devout and she's a very intelligent person. Nothing you can do about it. It's like cancer if you have something inherited like that. She couldn't help it. But it greatly affects her life, her social life, her marriage. But her husband is just there and devoted, and he's holy because of their relationship and their love for one another, which was not easy for them. So, but she and I agreed we're going to ask for a miracle for Ken. His name's Ken. That is, his eye be saved, his one last eye, or the two, his other eye, that he not lose that sight, that it stop, and that he even be totally healed of this cancer, this brain cancer. And we're asking Charlene Richard to pray with us from heaven, to ask Jesus for a big favor for Ken and his wife. So join me in that prayer, please. But Francis did that for this Pope, Pope Louis the 11th, and but he didn't eat any eggs nor fish. So the successors of Louis blessed and favored Francis. Francis's order spread throughout Europe, and his name was reverenced throughout the Christian world. He passed away at 91 years old, nearly 92, in 1507 on Good Friday. So Francis of Paola, hermit, who then became a religious order founder, the Minims. Oh, he has a lot that we can learn from him on asceticism. And asceticism is a big part. Dying to ourselves. God bless his real presence in us. And thanks for all your prayers. And remember inner joy, inner joy. Christ's love in us and us in Christ. And the purpose and good of asceticism, to die to ourselves, but to not let it become a big thing with us, that we're giving up something, and try to die to the point that it doesn't matter whether we have or we have not. The big thing is to be close with Christ. Love, 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 love. God bless his real presence in it. I already said that, but I guess we can't say it too many times, huh? And try to understand when I said I have no enjoyment in life. It's a dying to self. I have joy. But all this other does not matter, except I am sure God wants me to learn more discipline. And that's why I am going at it with organizing things, getting things in order, and getting rid. I had been rid out and then inherited things from my mother. I have to figure out. Maybe some nieces want. My kids don't seem to at this point. They might later. But even just tools and screws and things that are just here and there, So I'm going to discipline myself and water the dead sticks in my life and around me. And do a good job of taking care of the dogs and loving the dogs. I do love them. And I have to admit, I think I enjoy them. But I know I'm detached enough that there'll come a time I'll have to part. So, but it's not that it's a different sense, what I'm trying to describe. That it's not, there's no real outer joy in externals that much. there's an inner, like a deep inner joy of these little creatures, a deep inner joy of the beauty of the tulips coming up and the daffodils and the crocuses have been blooming, and it's inner, it's all inner, the kind of joy that I'll have when I'm dead also. So it's pain has been my ascetic teacher, I'll put it that way. Severe pain, constant, has taught me that. So it's not that there's anything I really like. In a video the other day, I said something about how I would have sat with these people from England. Well, I don't sit. I listened to that later and I thought, I don't sit, but I would have stood by them, and I sit and stand and sit and stand like that. Like I'll sit 3 minutes on the edge of a bleacher, I sit on the end and then stand up. But I thought, no, I wouldn't sit with them. But to me, that's what I mean, is, and so even that, it's like going there, being invited. I was thrilled that I was invited even. There were times that I wouldn't have been at all, or anything shared with me with a family member. They went through, each of mine have gone through their phases, and two are in phases. But I went out of charity, and so it was an inner joy that I was even wanted to be there to watch and to appreciate what she developed in this big facility, and has a lot of responsibility in. So in that regard, and to meet lovely people and to inquire about their lives and do all that. But I suppose what I would have probably, bed is my spot otherwise, or lying down flat on the floor with my knees up somewhere. So, but I'm fortunate that I have built in asceticism in that regard. I suppose my greatest love is comfort, is anything that helps me not be in as much agony. Well, put it that way. So there's joy in that, though. It makes me laugh, Who would have thought 40 years ago? Well, it'll be 40 years this summer? Oh, 45. The 41. I'm already over 40. 40 years of this pain all the time. So, okay, happy asceticism. And I don't know if God wants us to live a perpetual Lent. I kind of think not for most of us, but that's what Francis thought for his minims, the minimalists, and the least of the orders. And they did live very minimally. That was their focus, be very minimalist. And I want to, but I had to accumulate tools and building supplies to do this project, and then it'll be a matter of getting rid of it all, finishing it and getting rid of it all. Temporary. I accumulate temporarily for a goal, and we all and it's good. I think it's good to have interactions with nature or water, plant, garden, or that kind of thing. So there's certain things we need for that: shovel and a trowel, and I have a little digger pitchfork thing, and some fertilizer to give some of the trees a boost. Some that has acid in it for the conifers. Feed them like I feed the dogs. But am I all, oh, yip, yip, hooray? No, it's all effort with a pain body. There's not an outer thing of like, oh, wow, I get to do this. But in a way, yes, because then I always consider people who can't walk or can't do anything. But then I would just be doing reading and other instead. If I didn't have my sight, then I'd have to figure out something else. I would talk. So we just keep adapting. A part of asceticism is adapting to the ways that we've died, but always adapting more and more to God, to God, to God. Okay, I think you all get that. Probably had it before I started talking. Get this turned off here. God bless you.